Awesome. So hello again, everyone. My name is Avella Spiritu with Red 5, and I'll be co-facilitating this session today with Brian McEachern with PCL. And we're part of a committee of volunteers that run the Lean Community of Practice, also known affectionately as Lean-YEG. We host a Lean Coffee session on the third Friday of every month from September through June, from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m.-ish. Sometime soon, we'll be on location again. But for now, we are virtual. And usually what we do is Lean practitioners, we get together and we meet and discuss and learn about our favorite topic, which is Lean in our community. Sometimes we have a structured, agendaless, yet fun and laughter-filled conversations on Lean. However, today, while no less interesting, is another in a series of presentations on local Lean practitioners. And this one is titled Lean When It Matters. And for this introduction, I'll hand it off to Brian to introduce our really special speaker today. Go ahead, Brian.
Really special is a perfect way to put it. I've got a bit of a script here. So for almost 2 decades, James Simon has devoted his personal and professional life to supporting people, teams, and organizations to unleash an improvement mindset. James completed the True Lean Systems program at the University of Kentucky, run by current Toyota executives and former employees in 2008. He was fortunate to receive mentorship from some of the founding executives of Toyota North America, giving him a deep understanding of respect for people in the pursuit of excellence and the Toyota way. James is dedicated and driven, having worked his way from entry-level positions in sales and manufacturing to senior leadership roles. In his current role, he leads change and improvement at the University of Alberta Hospital within Alberta Health Services. Big extra hand for him on doing that over the last 2 years, because we all know we need it. It's the largest integrated health system in Canada. Keep that in mind just for a bit there. James is a published author and speaker, but his true passion will always be one-on-one coaching over a good cup of coffee, and I can attest to that for sure. Giving back and sharing knowledge are values James embodies through his volunteer work as the Chief Change Officer for Innovative Canadians for Change, a Canadian global nonprofit organization. James is playing a key role in designing and launching IC Change's most recent initiative in Kenya, and this is really cool. And hopefully he'll tell us a bit about it. An innovative manufacturing space to incubate local startups, including a ceramic water filter productions company. James also has a passion for youth development, support, and providing positive role models, making time for coaching local basketball, soccer, and boxing. James has recently founded Headwaters to Change, a coaching business to support his goal of reaching and supporting people and teams to understand opportunities and embrace problems to achieve sustainable success. Despite all that in his busy schedule, which sounds like a lot, I don't know how he has time for anything else, but family is definitely number one for James, ensuring he can practice what he preaches both at home and professionally. But you might also find him with a guitar in his hand, performing with his band, or fly fishing at a local stream. My couple little additions to that as well is that we've known each other for, and I had to look this up because saying that we've known each other for almost 20 years makes us sound old. So yeah. We've known each other for 17 years. We've done a lot of things together. We've worked together. We're friends. We've jammed together. We've gone to concerts together. It's a wonderful opportunity to have him here with us. So, with all due respect, pay attention. He knows what he's talking about, and it's going to be pretty good. So, James, it's all yours, man.
Thank you very much. Whenever you hear anything like that, it's like, oh, now I've got to live up to that. It really is a pleasure to be able to connect with you all today. It has been, without any question, the most challenging few years I have ever experienced. This is the first time I have done anything outside of COVID support since our world changed. So this is a real pleasure. I hope not to absolutely bore you to death with slide presentations. So what my intent is to really walk through our journey and how we've set ourselves up within University of Alberta Hospitals to support a lean culture and really then just open up a conversation, because that's where it really happens. And I'm so grateful that it's over a cup of coffee, because that is definitely my jam. So again, I thank you all for taking the time out, and look forward to the conversation that we have as we go through this here. So Lean When It Matters, I thought was fitting, because I think we often talk about Lean in the perspective of tools and focusing on, particular problems that we're facing. And I really wanted to discuss it from a story perspective of why it's so important that we don't wait to develop our Lean culture, and we don't just focus on specific projects as they come up, because as I found out very quickly, Lean When It Matters is so important. So from the beginning, I came into AHS in 2011, and I really wanted to find out what was the sort of platform of Lean in healthcare. Again, as Brian mentioned, my background was in manufacturing, where we sort of took the more practical approach to Lean and understanding, the adaptation to, balancing your tack time, cycle time, line setups, driven by customer need for sure, but very much from that sort of manufacturing lens. So I had to take the time at the beginning to really understand it, going right back to the beginnings of sort of where the concepts of continuous improvement started and how it sort of integrated into AHS. Lean in healthcare is not really, in relative speak, it's kind of it's newer. I'd say the early 90s was when we first started to see more of the actual Lean language coming into healthcare, but it's been around for a lot longer, and I'll get into that. But my journey, Brian had mentioned, I would say for me, one of the biggest game changers was the mentorship that I gained. The individual in the picture with me, his name's Ken Creefel, and he was one of the first managers within Toyota North America, and he, along with some of the other founding managers that I got to meet, took me under their wing and really walked me through what Lean looks like when you apply it practically, because they didn't have Lean in Toyota when they first started out, right? And even when they're bringing the concepts into suppliers and within new facilities that they're starting up, it's not like they come in and they have like Lean training. They teach the Toyota approach to improvement, which we've all branded as Lean. And it was so deeply rooted in problem solving. And it gave me such a different perspective on the application and how to do it. And I don't think, had I not had that guidance, that mentorship, that I would have as comfortably made the switch into healthcare. And then through my work in healthcare and really wanting to give back, I think that was something that I had an opportunity back, I think, when was it, 2012? I was at a Lean conference down in Dallas, and was having a conversation with Jim Womack, who's pretty influential in the Lean world, and he was telling me that take the time and give back, share the knowledge that you have wherever you can. And I've always sort of kept that in my mind. And so an opportunity came up to help out with a nonprofit. It was driven by started up by one of the surgeons that I work with. And it has been just such a pleasure to go through. And I'm more than happy to talk about that towards the end and sort of give you a perspective into that. But it's been quite an interesting journey, and I'll sort of go into a little bit more of giving you just an understanding of AHS as a whole, and the sort of foundational pieces of what sort of set the stage for giving us the ability to apply Lean really when it mattered. So AHS, for those of you who don't know, is again like Canada's largest fully integrated provincial healthcare system. Our vision, is healthy Albertans, healthy communities together, with a mission to provide a patient-focused quality health system that is accessible and sustainable for all Albertans. Our AHS values are comprised in CARES, which is compassion, accountability, respect, excellence, and safety. I always start out with this because I think from a lean perspective, this is our sort of true north, right? This is what should always set up our ability to drive difficult conversations, because whenever you get into those difficult areas where you need to really move forward, you can use these as your anchor to bring people back to why it is that we're here. And that is really, really important, especially when dealing with difficult situations and trying to manage that change management perspective. It takes away the personal and it allows you to focus back on the why. So I support the University of Alberta hospital groups. Our facility is approximately 770 beds. It's expanded, not with any want from us over the last while with COVID. We service almost close to 1 million patients annually with approximately 6,500 employees. One of the areas that we're really proud of is that we provide some very specialized services with our cardiac care, specifically our transplant program, neurosciences, our burn treatment center, our respiratory therapy program, and our renal program. Just to give you an idea, because sometimes I think we think, the hospitals, within Edmonton, and that we service, Edmonton surrounding area. This is our catchment area. We have one of the largest catchment areas for patients in Canada. Because of the high level of care that we provide with our transplant program, we do get patients from far away, which you can imagine from a coordination of that patient care and ensuring that not only we're getting them to a hospital safely, but getting them back. The logistics that are required with that, with patient flow, are quite the undertaking, and something that we are always looking at making improvements on. So that's sort of like AHS and our facility in a real nutshell. The real focus here, though, is on how we built our improvement culture. And this is something that we have worked at day in and day out. So I did come into AHS in 2010. I initially started out at a provincial level, and that was where I was supporting different facilities across the entire province. I think one of my first initiatives was to look at the standardization of diabetes care across the province. That was quite the undertaking and the baptism into healthcare for me. So it was great from the perspective. It gave me a real end-to-end view, but was really eye-opening. And it allowed me to see just the importance of getting in at a site level and really working with the teams to develop that sustainable culture instead of the project-based approach to lean that often gets taken on. So since coming into AHS, I went from that provincial level. I then moved into an operational level, specifically within the cardiac sciences program, which functioned in the Edmonton zone. And within that program, I was able to develop a lean management system where we looked at the strategic alignment of the work that we were doing from the highest level within AHS down to where it really matters at our frontline level, and working with our teams and with our people to develop their problem-solving capabilities, really connecting the processes to our patients and putting them in the driver's seat to really move forward. It's been a real pleasure to do that and really connect these pieces. And one of the biggest areas that I have found so important when you're dealing with the integration of lean into organizations is taking the time to understand the organization's DNA. I think we often jump into to utilize the tools within Lean and the approaches that we know and have heard of and how they work. And one of the things that I really learned from my mentorship within Toyota was respect for people. And respect for people means finding out about what are we all about. And so I really, really tried to take the time, as I mentioned at the beginning, to understand not just how Lean integrated in with healthcare, but how did it integrate in with our organization? What was it that clicked? We often apply Lean as if it's got these magic powers that it's going to come in and just transform what we do, and we hear these great stories of organizations that have transformed what they do, but that can only be done through the people, and there has to be something about how the organization functions, how we think, that aligns with the Lean approach. And so I really took the time. I actually went into a lot of research around Lean in healthcare, and I went way back to 1856 during the Crimean War, where Florence Nightingale had been deployed to support the healthcare of the soldiers coming from the front line. And what they actually found is that the mortality rate in the hospital for the soldiers was at 42.7%. That means basically you had more chance of staying alive if you got injured and stayed at the battlefield than if you went to the hospital. That's how bad it was. Florence Nightingale was deployed with a number of her nurses to go in there and actually understand and in a sense basically applied improvement to the hospital. So she went through and she looked at what was causing infections, what was causing the soldiers that were coming in to not make it. And so much of what she found set the stage for a lot of the healthcare practices that we have today. And also from a construction perspective, the infrastructure for the sewage and drainage. The findings that she had found through research was that the waste that was coming out from the ward was actually traveling underneath the rooms through the stables, and the stables were below them as well. And so you had really poor ventilation. The windows were closed, and so all of these infectious diseases were just allowed to sort of fester within the area. Patients were not spaced enough. We all know how important physical distancing is. Well, a lot of that started out with her learnings here. And the actual bed placements and the way the wards were structured after she had gone in and understood the problem and started to apply the applications of her changes within this ward, they're actually still around today. It's called a Nightingale ward, and it's appropriate spacing. They discovered that the patients were eating with their hands, so transferring the diseases and the bacteria directly into the hands. So she did nothing more than brought over her own cutlery and to prove the point, and gave them to the team so that they could provide them with for the patients as they were getting treated. And hand hygiene was fully developed and put into structure through her work here, along with the approaches to changing the bed, turning the patients, and many, many more. But she did that all through methodical problem solving. The chart on the side there is actually referred to quite commonly as a cost-cum chart. It's actually the first example of what we now call a pie chart, and that was developed by her and an engineer from the UK, who put the findings together of the mortality rates so that she could put it in the actual report, which is called the Cox-Cum report, which was sent to the British government to suggest that they needed to change the way the hospital was set up. And they actually moved the mortality rate from 42.4% down to 4%. And it was outstanding. And that was in a relatively short time period, just through implementing the changes. So my long-winded story here is that improvement has been within healthcare for a long time. So when I came into healthcare, I wanted to respect that. And so understanding that healthcare is an organization of problem solvers was my very first step into the implementation of lean thinking into healthcare, working with our teams to understand that. So I took the time, and I used to round on a daily basis with our physicians and nursing team to understand that thought process. So the problem-solving methodology that I utilize, and hopefully many others, is what's referred to as the Toyota business practice. It's 8-step problem solving. It does work within the structure of the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. But what Toyota had discovered is that the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle was too broad. They couldn't teach it. So they broke it down into 8 teachable steps so that they could actually start to ingrain almost that checklist within the way that they think. And within AHS, the Alberta Health Services Improvement Way was defined as 4 steps, as define the opportunity to build understanding, act, improve, and sustain the results. Again, 4 steps, very vague. So I wanted to figure out, like, how can I get and tap into that problem-solving culture that we inherently have, but align it to an improvement approach so that we could get people really starting to think that way. And so I walked through and started to understand the patient diagnosis pathway. And I saw very, very quickly that they were doing exactly the same thing that we teach with problem solving every day. They are doing that with patient care. We come in as a patient, and we are telling our care providers about what the symptoms we have, what the problems were that brought us to the hospital, to your doctors. Then they go through and they do assessments, and they gather diagnostics and lab work so that we can understand the data and the fact of why we actually came into the health system. As a team, they review these recommendations and these findings to develop a care plan. These interventions are then taken out, orders are given, and we get our treatment, and hopefully we go on the right track and we are well enough and can move through to getting back home and stabilizing. If not, we reassess, we gather data, we isolate the specific area that we want to improve with that patient care, and we go through the treatment place again. Plan, Do, Check, Act, right? Again and again and again. It was at that sort of critical point where I was like, okay, this is how we're going to move it forward. Because from the point of the implementation of true lean, it's based off of problems and fixing problems, right? So as soon as you get to that point and you fix the issue, then you're putting your countermeasure that fixed in place and standardizing it and moving it through. And now you have your platform for continuous improvement. It changed the way that I was able to connect, because I took the time to understand the DNA, and you would have the same thought processes within your communities. I've had these conversations with auto mechanics. It's like, well, when a car comes in, what do? Well, you talk to the customer, and they go through their process of why they brought the car in, and then they don't just jump to a solution and start fixing it. They bring it to the back, they put it on diagnostics, they isolate the issue, they run a test, and they go through it. It's no different. And you start having these conversations with people to understand that piece, and you can quickly go in and align lean practices of problem solving to get where you need to get to. And that's a real critical point, because it forms a foundation for true lean implementation at that cultural level. So once I understood that,
I think you went on mute, James.
oh, is that good? Can you hear me now?
You're good.
That was weird. I must have a ghost in there pushing the button. So the balance here is the system and organizational approach. This is the alignment to key priorities from the top of your organization right down to, again, where the real work is happening. There's different approaches to that. I do take the approach of Hoshin Connery, which is strategic alignment, utilizing plan, do, check, act along the way to make sure that you're not just talking about key priorities, but you're actually aligning them through key actions that are tracked and monitored. But then more importantly, on the other side of the balance, it's connecting it to that frontline perspective. So supporting that daily problem solving, establishing that management system so that you're actually keeping track and reviewing, and that you have a place to go to where your key KPIs are, and that your problems that you're working on are visible and displayed. And then we also have a quality council structure. So this is where teams come together and they actually discuss maybe specific problems that they're seeing that are trending over time. But it allows also a place to provide more education and teaching. So it's really taking it from that sort of frontline level and then moving it through more structured level. The key ingredients that we found really beneficial to moving this forward, again, sort of a balance between change management and lean philosophies. So first and foremost, you have to know what it is you're trying to change and the need behind it and why you're trying to do it. People will not get behind it if they don't understand that. That is critical. Any time I'm starting work on my team, starting work with teams, defining the need, understanding the why is always the first thing we really ingrain. Then we make sure that empowerment of the team is in place. If you're going to bring people together, do they actually have the support to make the changes? It's one of those things that's easier said than done, because relinquishing that authority of making the changes can be tough for some organizations. Clearly defining roles, again, sounds something that's very basic and straightforward, but you find out pretty quickly that sometimes people, even though they're in a position and they have been for quite a while, don't actually understand what their roles are and how it supports the work that they're trying to achieve. And so clarifying that and making sure that roles have clear alignment is it's foundational, as well as the establishment of standards. I think you probably all in Lean community have heard, where there is no standard, you can have no improvement. You have to know what the expectations are in order for people to make change. Otherwise, you get into a culture of blame, and that doesn't get us anywhere. So the foundational element of standardization is an absolute must. And then the problem solving culture that goes along with it. And then that just repeats. So those elements all together, if you're, in one picture, you see at the top left or there or right, I guess you're looking at the screen, shows the organizational priorities and alignment. It then translates down to an area within your work that you track what you're doing. And then once people see and they know what things are being looked at, what's tracked, what the targets are, what the measures are, then they have the ability to identify abnormal from normal, which gives us the gap of a problem. And when you have a problem-solving approach, you can engage your staff. This is an example of where we use problem-solving forms, so that we can actually capture and have a way that the staff can capture the problems that they're bringing forward. One of the things that I find quite often within organizations is that we try to promote that culture where we want people to bring opportunities forward. It can sometimes be in the form of an employee suggestion box, those type of things. A lot of the time, it's employees that have hallway conversations with a manager about a specific problem that hasn't been fixed. The manager then takes a few steps and is interrupted by somebody else who has another problem or has to get to something, and through no fault of their own, they don't get to the problem. It creates the culture where individuals then say, well, we brought this forward so many times and management don't do it. It's not the management's fault, it's that we haven't created a process or a system that actually supports the ability for us to support meaningful change. So that problem-solving form is an accountability check. right? If it's really important to make a change, then it's important enough to document. And if it's important enough to document, it's important enough to have a discussion. And that discussion is your coaching opportunity. So then the manager has the ability to actually walk through and coach that problem-solving mindset. Is it truly a problem, or is it something we're seeing one-off? Have you had the conversation with your staff, with your colleagues? You know, are they seeing it in that same way? But it creates a conversation that's so important, right? And especially now, I think in our day and age of technology, we like to adopt new technology, which is great in some ways, but it hides things. And so keeping it simple and having something in paper and putting it up on a wall, and where you can see that people are taking the time to write things on it and adjust it and change it, it gives you that connection to the problem, and you get to see in real time how it works. And I think sometimes we lose that with technology. So keeping it simple, keeping it visual, keeping it in the conversation along the whole journey of how it works has been really foundational. So we have been working on this for a few years now. Again, within the cardiac sciences program, when I first came in, we were laying this foundation for about 5 years. We really had a lot of success. The teams really bought into it. Our physicians were really engaged with it. And then that led me to taking on the current position I'm in as a program manager, where the idea was to spread that learning throughout our hospital groups. When I say the hospital groups, that's the University of Alberta Hospital, the Mazankowski Cardiac Center, the CKQE Cardiac Center, and the K Edmonton Clinics, which is a facility just across the street from us. And again, we have our broad-reaching groups with renal programs as well. And so now we're in the process, and have been for the past few years, of trying to bring this into play. Now, that sounds like a great story, sounds like a great plan. So here's the reality of it. We go into action mode. 2019, the province embarked on the implementation of our electronic medical record system. Put it into perspective, this is the largest implementation of a single EMR in Canada, if not North America. This, because of being an integrated provincial health system, this is something that's going to be standardized and run across the entire province. We were fortunate enough to be the first site to go live, being one of the largest facilities in the province, which at first was really exciting. It was a lot of work. The actual planning and implementation, and I'll get into a little bit more, started back in the beginning of 2018. And the lead up to the implementation of an EMR like this is immense. And switching from paper to electronic records is I mean, change management, like the amount of papers that you could have written off of the learnings that we had are mind-blowing. I mean, this was huge. Why I'm emphasizing that is that we came out of that in November and making that implementation, and we were exhausted. I mean, we were literally running around the clock. I remember being in the hospital, overnight, not leaving till, being in work at 6 in the morning and almost not leaving till that the next day, because we had to make sure we were hands-on supporting our team. So by the end of that implementation, we were absolutely exhausted. And we all know what happened in 2020 when the pandemic started to rear its head in Canada. 2019, we towards December, we were seeing it. We had no idea what we were going into. So hence the out of the frying pan and into the fire. Our site went from a complete place of exhaustion from the implementation and the change fatigue of something that was just immense, and straight into the pandemic. It couldn't have been any worse of a situation for us. So the Connect Care implementation, just to give you a little bit of an insight of what we're looking at. Again, it's taking every step along the patient journey, which we use to document in paper charts, and we put that into an electronic health system. So this is not anything that we had in place. You know, we have had like little micro areas where we utilize technology and things like that, but this is a complete shift in how we do our work. Workflows had to be standardized. They have to go into the system in a set order. We all know that when we don't have an electronic system or those tight standards, we make workarounds, right? Like that's just human nature. So you're taking years of learned practices within healthcare and transitioning that into everyone having to do it in a structured format. Otherwise, the activity stops. So the amount of training and support for that was huge, absolutely huge. I mean, from the implementation, it was 24-hour support to our frontline providers to make sure that they knew exactly what they needed to do. Again, training years, a year in advance to trying to get all of our teams up to speed. It was a privilege to be a part of, because I don't think I would get the opportunity to do that level of an implementation ever again. I mean, it was enormous. But because we were so ingrained, because we had been doing that work, and I sit with our senior leadership team in every meeting that we have ingrained improvement and lean into everything we do. And so all of these decisions, all of these approaches, I got to have my team in there and being a part of those conversations and actually challenging things. So when we got to the phase of having to adjust and bring these these computers into the workspace, we had a lot of construction needs. And I started looking at these workflows with our teams and realizing, like, how are we going to make this happen? So we brought our frontline providers together. We got into one of our shelled-in spaces. We laid out a unit, and we did real fancy cardboard cutouts of all of our to-scale equipment. And we worked with our teams to literally run through our workflows. And we'd bring stretchers in and move them through our little corridors there. And we're like, okay, well, where are we going to put the computers in the hallway? Does it make sense there? Well, you've got fire regulations, so you can't be any more than 4 inches away from the wall. Well, that's a problem, because the mounts that they had initially thought of were 5 inches, and we can't do that. So now we have to think about a different mount. So now they have to go back and make these mounts. But because we had ingrained that level of thinking into it, we were able to really bring that and interject that thinking into the design phase of getting this done on an early enough so that we weren't making these mistakes. And it was great. We really had that opportunity. And I think if we hadn't have set that foundation, would we have done this? Would we have been able to say, hey, in Lean Talk, did we pull the and-on cord? Because we did. We said, hang on, you need to stop this. Like, we need to make sure we are engaging with our frontline staff, that they are part of these changes that we do. And so being able to do this as the first site, we're actually informing the overall design concepts for the entire provincial rollout of this. So it was a fantastic opportunity to really ingrain that level of thinking and bring that in place. And we had to do this in a short time period. Like, again, 2018, we started going through this work. 2019, we're on a really tight construction schedule, and we brought everyone together, and we're planning out. We've got across the whole site, including the Stollery Children's Hospital, which is going live with us as they're integrated within our facility. You're talking over 80 medical units. Well, you can't just go in and just start doing construction work in a medical unit. They have to be properly hoarded off. We have to do it in a way that we aren't, completely stripping our capacity to serve the patients. So we have the planning on that and the integration. So massive, huge Gantt chart, trying to plan out all the construction elements, what needs to come in, when's the electrical coming in. It was working with our capital management team who took lead on these construction elements, and our facilities group. We have standards within our facility that have to be maintained. It's a certain way that things go that maybe is slightly different from a different facility. And so the integration of all that knowledge was unbelievable, and quite the orchestra to put in place. We understood very quickly that being an older hospital and a lot of our facilities, we all go through this. We do not have space. Like, we just don't. It is a constant struggle. We have stretches in the hallway, equipment in the hallway. We've got to, make sure that we are not, again, impeding with fire regulations. And so we did a complete site-wide 5S event because we had identified the problem that if we didn't create space, how are we going to put now a computer on the wall that has to get, pulled out because it's on an articulating arm, so that it can be as close to the patient as possible. And we created what we call a triangle of care, where you have the patient at the center, you have the care provider, and then you have the technology, so that the technology can be seen by the care provider and the patient. It's really important to us that our patients and families are a part of that care planning and those decisions. So creating that space was like trying to, again, it was like creating magic. You had, like, we don't have it. So the tool of 5S and getting everyone involved and decluttering the units and really challenging, like, what needed to go there. Do we need this much supplies? Could we reduce the size of the supply cut? In some areas, we actually tried doing a model unit where we adjusted the heights of the counters to accommodate for different technology, where we recessed areas within the wall to see if we could gain more space in the hallway, and creating all these different spaces. It was a huge amount of work. And again, we have to do this without trying to impact our capacity. Like, we are always running at like 100 to 110% capacity, because the demand on our health system is so high, and we just cannot afford to shut down rooms unnecessarily. So we really have to coordinate all these activities in a way that doesn't impact our ability to provide patient care. So it was massive. And again, coming out of that, again, hands-on support, problem solving continuously with the workflows, value stream mapping, the different standards and processes when people getting into it. It was a huge amount of work, and that sort of led us up till again, it was end of December for the to where we actually got to a point where it's like, okay, we're using the system, it's running through, and we thought, okay, well, we'll have a bit of a breather. January, we'll start making our strategic plans for what we need to do moving forward, and then our world just got flipped. I honestly can't tell you how challenging it was. I have not worked from home. I'm working from home today because I'm actually off, but I didn't get to work from home. I worked in the hospital from the very beginning. And in March, we were scared. We were seeing the images coming in from Italy. We then started seeing it progressing across globally. I mean, we set up an incident command center within our hospital, of which I was a part of, where we would have like the daily numbers coming in, and we would see them growing and growing and growing. And we're making these, trying to stay on top of the data and the information as it's coming in, trying to understand, like, when do we need to be prepared? What is this going to look like? And it was horrifying. I mean, I remember when we first set up our daily screening processes. So again, talk about trying to plan your flow. I'm responsible for setting up our location of where staff would come in and do their daily screening. And we had to do it like overnight. It was like, no, this has to happen. We have to make sure everyone's coming in and that they're safe, and that we're supporting our front line, so that we're not spreading any disease any across the hospital. Like, okay, well, I mean, you're talking thousands of employees coming in, and we had to set up our lines, go through like what our stations look like, getting everyone checked in. And that first day, talk about a quick problem solving plan, do check act. It was a nightmare. I mean, we thought we had our flow balanced out, and we had lineups out the door because people weren't, just decided not to come through at the set times when they're supposed to, and everyone's coming in because they had to get up onto their shifts. Areas that weren't scheduled to come into certain areas, we had lineups that were almost out the door. And people were so scared of being too close to each other. I remember standing and trying to, from a leadership perspective, support our front line, and people coming up and crying, being just so scared, and trying to make these changes and support that was something I will never ever forget. But we took a step back and we really went back to the basics, and we said, okay, we need to put our thought process in place here. What do we need to do? Let's understand where we are currently. And so we gained the best information we had. We pulled the teams together to make sure that they knew that the changes that we were going to make, they were going to be a part of. I was absolutely adamant that we have to establish standards for whatever that meant, because keep in mind, the rate of change and the information that we were gathering, it was changing so fast. We would make a plan at 9 o'clock in the morning. At 12 o'clock in the morning, World Health Organization had changed the script on it. And so we had to go back and redo it. So we got these standards in place as quick as we could, only to allow us the ability to adjust them as quick as we could as well. I was privileged and honored to be able to set up our COVID units alongside our head of IPC, a doctor called Stephanie Smith, who was an amazing leader during this. I can't even begin to speak of how much respect I have for her. But being able to step in from, again, the perspective of I'm running the continuous improvement lean program, and I'm now leading the setup of a clinical COVID unit. So we went back right to the basics, engaging people. Within a 12-hour period, I had all of our key leaders bring groups of their teams through a unit where we walked through what a COVID unit could look like based off of the standards that we had been seeing coming in. So we were literally taking things, like looking at, our IPC heads were taking all the information that they were getting in through their avenues. We were looking at what the setups were like in hospitals across Europe, across North America, and we were taking these elements and we were putting them in place. Visual management was huge. And I remember having the conversation of how important it is that we establish those visual standards, because we are going to be fatigued. We are in full PPE. We're going to be stressed. We're going to be in clothing that restricts our ability for just normal, regular sort of breathing. We're going to be in a place of panic. We need all the visuals that we can in place. So again, the basics of sort of making sure that 5S was really in place, and that there was clear designated areas that you could go in, that you couldn't go in, that you needed certain PPE for, that you didn't. We set up all those standards, and these documents allowed us to do a rapid turnaround of units. And when I say rapid, I mean we would start seeing, this happened in this particular activity where we pulled everyone together to do this work was at the end of March 30th. And we pulled this together within a 24-hour period to give us our first set of standards. We actually didn't see the impact of COVID until October. That whole time period where we were working at the beginning there, it was just panic and not knowing. And it was living in that state of it could hit us anytime. It could hit us anytime. And then, you know, province made a decision to open up for Thanksgiving. And right after that was when we saw the numbers absolutely spike. We went from opening up one unit, and then 24 hours it was second unit, then third unit. And we're converting the units to COVID units. So that means we had to make sure that we had the room was sectioned off appropriately, that we had the right supplies available within the room, that the unit was laid out with all the visuals in place, that the supplies going in and out were set up. It was a huge undertaking. We got it down where we would call a group together and we could have a unit set up within hours. And we'd even get it going like just really smooth. We could not have done that without the understanding of developing the standards, which allowed us to train ahead of time and support the ability for our frontline staff to be prepared, so they knew exactly what needed to happen. You were seeing more patients coming in, you went to a mixed COVID unit. From a mixed COVID unit, you then went into a full COVID unit. And it was so smooth, and everyone was so comfortable with it, and it was all because we stuck to those true lean concepts. These are just some examples of some of the visual management. I was responsible for having my team set up all the visual management across all of our facilities. We would have units. I think some of the points that really made me proud was that units that weren't even COVID units would come in and say, hey, we saw the visual management that you had on there. Can we put that in place on our units just in case? And so these donning and doffing areas is where your donning is where you put on your PPE, your doffing is where you take off your PPE. We wanted to make sure it was really clear because the spread of COVID was so rapid. We didn't want to have any room for error, none. And so these standards were so important. We had tons of visual signs up, and they were changing all the time. And then we had to go back and say, we've got too much visual management. Like, it's too confusing. So we went from like one extreme to the other, and then we had to go through and take it away. It was just a constant back and forth of change. We also led the setup of our PPE education approach. So on the units, we were really short-staffed, and people were I can't even, like, stressed and scared doesn't even begin to describe it. And what our frontline providers did for us, I can't even. I will be in forever debt seeing it firsthand and seeing patients. I would literally be on my hands and knees in our COVID units when they needed it because we needed rooms set up. I was on COVID units with active COVID patients trying to put tape down to provide some support for our staff to feel safe in their area. I would go into that unit and with my team and support however we could. And you have to come home after that shift and try to act like everything is normal. I would go into my car, and these aren't exaggerations, and you would break down because you were so stressed out and you just wanted to provide the best support you could. But also, whilst everyone else was on lockdown and at home, we did not have that choice. And coming home, I was so scared that I was going to give my family COVID. And so you would literally be taking off your clothes before you get in the door, telling your kids, don't come near me, I need to have a shower. It was pretty intense. So these type of activities where we put in, we've got your back, we put up a sign, and we gave everyone that was a PPE coach, that was someone that you knew could have your back when you were taking off your PPE or putting on your PPE, and you could turn to them and you visually could see that. Again, we didn't want to have any opportunity to miss or make a mistake. So these programs that we put in place were there to keep our people safe and our patients and the designated family supports that were allowed in safe. And they started out, slowly, but as soon as people sort of saw the value behind it, they would be on board. They were leading it, and we were putting it together, and it was it was quite the undertaking. Every time we thought COVID was breaking at the end of a wave, we would have a debrief. So we would, wherever possible, call a Zoom meeting, and we would have our physicians, residents, staff, all of our support people, patients, families. We would connect with them. We'd say, what could we do better? What could we adjust? Did this standard work for you? Do we need to change it? And we were constantly in that cycle of change and making the changes as much as we could and as quick as we could. And every time we get to that end, we're like, okay, great. Well, we're seeing the numbers drop, and then all of a sudden, you know, it'd be all right. We're going to have the best summer ever, and then the numbers spiked again, and we're sitting in hospital going, is this really happening? Like again? Like we can't do it. And I remember like saying, like, we can't go through one more wave. We can't go through one more wave. Like I don't know if we have it in us, and we'd pick it up and do it again. And this last wave was the worst, without any question. We saw numbers that we hadn't, to the levels we hadn't seen, even though the wave prior to that, the acuity was higher. We had the highest rates of patients in our critical care environments that we had ever seen. We had more critical care spaces open than we have ever had in our history, and that was really scary. That was really, really tough, from the fact that we were actively seeing the impact of COVID causing death at the levels that we had never seen. And the last wave that we've just, hopefully, fingers crossed, coming out of, was different from the perspective that it was just the volumes were so high because the rate of spread was so high. And even though people weren't getting as sick, people were coming in with underlying conditions and still requiring that hospitalization. So it has just been relentless. But I really don't think we would have been able to handle it as well as we did, and I'm so impressed at how well we did without having those foundational elements in place that they were ingrained as part of our culture, and we needed to make change, and our teams came together and did it. They dropped everything that they needed to make sure that we could set ourselves up to be successful. I really hope we have a little bit of time to recover, because we need it. You know, we always hear, and we're always got our finger on the pulse. We hear of a potential 6th wave, and I think you're living in a space of hoping that that's not going to be at the same level of impact. But we've been there many times now, so we are still prepared. We are still within our hospital, within all our hospitals and our healthcare facilities, not changing any of our practices. We are still ready to go. We still are seeing high numbers of COVID cases coming in. We continue to capture our lessons learned, but we are really hoping that we can move forward and really start focusing back on just our regular practice of healthcare. And with that, I truly thank you all for taking the time and hearing our story. And now for the fun stuff. Hopefully we can open it up and have some discussion and answer any questions you have. And I'm sure I'll have a couple for you.
That was awesome.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, James, for sharing with the Lean-YEG. My key takeaway was a common theme to understand first, understanding your organization's DNA. Those lean wins come from your people, so respecting the people in the process is so critical. It's vital that before we implement changes to culture, you seek first to understand and study the people and the processes they operate in. So you gain that knowledge on what improvements that will click. It supports your problem-solving culture and builds that resilience in your people for when it matters.
Yeah, absolutely.
So before we get to questions and answers, our next Lean Coffee is Thursday, April 14th. Please save the date in your calendar. Join our LinkedIn page. Learn about our next upcoming topic. We'll also be posting the recording for today on our YouTube account. We can also watch past presentations. I'll put those in the link, or those links in the chat. So when we get into the Q&A, please post your questions in the chat or use the raise hand feature. And don't forget to unmute yourself before talking because everyone got muted. And at this point, I'll hand it back to Brian, who will be facilitating the Q&A. Go ahead, Brian.
Sure. Well, there's one quick question in the chat there from Alex. Is the next one going to be in person? No, the next one is also going to be virtual. So we made a decision as a Lean group here that we were going to continue our series up until the end of the cycle in June, that they're all going to be virtual, and then we're going to reassess that for the new ones going in September. So stay tuned for that, but the next one will be virtual, just like this one. So let's open it up and see if we can stump him with some questions or just whatever you might have out there. If you want to throw your hand up, Sarah's already started there, so if you have any questions, just throw your hand up. I'll get to you. But Sarah, go for it.
Hi, wanted to say, holy moly, amazing presentation, awe-inspiring. There were several moments there where I was actually choking up, so really rad. I had a question about when you were integrating technology, because you were saying that you had to coordinate the, that planning design stage prior to implementation without disrupting activities. And I kind of wanted to hear a little bit more about how you did that without disrupting anything.
Yeah, it's a really good question. I should say it was with limited disruption. So again, we would look at a specific unit. And so we had gone through and we did a complete assessment. So after we had got our standard for what we felt like the 80% of the application of the technology in a clinical unit or would look like, we then went around with with a multidisciplinary team, with IT, our construction supports, IPC, a wide array of individuals. We went to every single unit and we made a plan. Once we made the plan, then we made a schedule. And they said, okay, we can go through here. And we made sure we balanced, we would never have like two of our neuro units under construction at the same time. We wouldn't have, we'd always balance it within it. The group, we couldn't have surgical, we were doing this in the ORs as well. So it was like, okay, well, we need to continue providing, our surgical support so we can have this OR shut down this day, and then that'll get done. But that, like we said, okay, you have, I can't remember, what is it, the negotiation on how long it would take literally came down to the drying time of the mud. Right. So and I pushed back like, okay, well, we can't do that. I'm like, you guys, like, is there a quicker dry time on that? Like, what can we do for it? And like, so it was down to that sort of level, and everybody like, okay, well, you have a unit is going to be shut down for, I can't remember. I want to say it was like 12 days, which was huge for us. Like a 12-day unit being out, that's 18 beds. That's massive. But we had to like stagger it. And as we were doing this, the coordination across the zone, all the other hospitals then had to pick up that slack. So we had to have that, sort of teamwork. Okay, like, we're going to be out, but when you go live, which has all been put on hold and will start back up in May, we will then be playing tag and saying, all right, well, we've got your back now. So when you shut down your units to do this work, or you need that support, we're going to be taking more patients. So that back and forth planning, coordination, teamwork, and understanding is how we mitigated that to the best of our abilities. And the communication was so key, because if they were coming across an issue in construction of one of those units, we needed to know, like, before they even had an understanding of what that looked like, because the impact of that to our patient care was huge. So the communication around that, we were having daily meetings on the planning of it. So it was I would say more so about the planning ahead of time, the establishment of the standard. Like, I cannot tell you the importance of standardization. Like, I know you hear it all the time, right? In Lean, we hear it all the time. It is fundamental, 100% fundamental. It was the reason for our success, and it was the reason we were able to know when we were going to fail. Right, so it gives you the sight on both of those. So that, along with everyone being on board, making a very structured plan and constant communication around that plan and around that construction schedule, was really, really key.
Awesome, thank you.
No problem.
I love that you're talking about mud drying and Sarah's with a drywall company.
Yeah.
that was it wasn't planned that way either.
No, I was totally going to be like, well, there's ProSet 90 and
Yeah, you know what? I started to know the names of all that stuff.
That's cool.
Ardell, you had your hand up there.
Hi, thank you very much for the presentation. That was, although I was very much on the technical side of how are they doing things and how is this working, and as I'm watching and hearing the news, this was so enlightening and so interesting. So thank you for that. One, I sure hope that you and the teams that you supported get the support you need post all of that, because that's a lot. And however that's going to affect you mentally, physically, emotionally, I really hope you guys get that. And then the second thing, which is kind of my question, Lean is not new, but in a lot of cases, I've worked in manufacturing, finance, I'm in construction now. Lean is the philosophy, and it's an idea. And do you think that the adoption of these Lean philosophies was easier to take on for your teams and become more easily adopted because of the emergency of the whole pandemic? Like, it seems like as you talk, your teams and your folks came together and got on board with these processes very, very quickly. Do you think that's because of they just needed that guidance? And then how can we recreate that without an emergent situation?
Yeah, great questions. And, you know, I really appreciate the shout out on the mental health. You know, it is our next, you know, I'm sure this is just, you know, in my opinion, I'm not clinical in any way, shape or form, but I think it's our next area that we're going to be really hit by is mental health. So we all need to make sure we're doing that. This is a huge change that we have not seen on this scale in our lifetimes, and we do need to make sure that we're all checking out our mental health and not being too proud to do it. I know I have had many sessions with counselors over the time because we need it. You know, we're not past it. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. You know, the impact on our mental health within our systems. Yeah, we have great people, amazing people. Do I think that this was a move forward within, or something that moved us forward with Lean? I think that I mean, like healthcare, we live in a world of jumping in and doing our best when the world is at its worst. You want to see a team come together and follow really tight standards. Watch a trauma come in to our emergency department and see how teams come together to deal with it. They do it in the same way, with the same level of care and ability to follow standards. Anytime that we have our tightest standards in healthcare are around our emergent situations, and it's where we thrive. It's in the times where you're more facing sort of your daily work that the standards sort of are there, and we're always trying to come back and support those. We are by no means anywhere near where we need to be, but our teams are phenomenal. I am so proud to be a part of it. But creating that sense of urgency, I think it's something organizations struggle with. It's why Lean over the decades goes like this, right? Like it's all of a sudden the world is coming into financial struggles where we go into a recession, and all of a sudden there's a resurgence in Lean. Why? Well, it's because we weren't prepared before that. And that's kind of what I really wanted to sort of really get across in this talk, was that we have to have the systems and the processes and the culture in place before it. You have to have that sense of urgency and awareness every day. And that can come from the fact that you've had one customer who wasn't satisfied. Is that what's your level of driving that sense of urgency? And what is your why? I know that whenever we come back to having tough conversations, like I was saying, bringing it back to the reason why your organization exists can create that sense of reality. I think sometimes we put our personal opinions and importance above the actual reason why we're in our positions. And if you can, I'd done some work with some folks from the military. They were fairly high-ranking officers, and I remember them telling me that they used to have these meetings where they basically would go into a meeting, and it was rank off. So you'd come in the room, you take your rank off, and you would have open conversations around what it is you're actually trying to achieve. I think that's where you get them. I love that, because you actually get to focus on what is important. And I think a good leader creates a sense of urgency and need. You're never gonna, I hope that we don't have this urgency anymore. But it definitely spurs you into those ability to really, be successful. And I think it's definitely an ingredient that we don't often get the ability to drive, but I think a good leader knows how to create that within their organization. Any organization right now with our supply chain issues that isn't in this is not going to be around for much longer. That's the reality. The organizations that really thrived were the organizations that had the ability to adapt their whole setup and all of a sudden start making face shields and masks, and they changed their entire production line to support the need of the now, because the urgency was there in that ability, and they were agile and they were nimble, and they had the structures and processes within that they could do that, and they're thriving now. Those that didn't, unfortunately, they are in a tough spot right now. I hope that sort of answered that question.
It did. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I love your thing in the chat there, Ardell, about a documentary. There you go, James. There's the next challenge. The AHS documentary on how you guys dealt with all this, because
yeah, I'd like to say that we're unique. I think that every hospital across the globe did what they needed to do to deal with this, and can continue to. And I think that I'm fortunate to have quite a few connections across different hospitals and globally. Talking to some colleagues down in UCLA recently, and comparing our stories, and there's so much similarity there, and I think that we I think our ability to understand that we're not unique and not special, and to actually be able to share, I think that's that's the beauty of what you're trying to do here with any consortium. You're trying to create the platform, the ability to understand that as much as you're unique, you're not. And the more that you can learn from each other, from the reality that you're all on the same path. I think what's interesting is that we use the terminologies around lean. I like to think but you get to a point where you understand the methodology enough that you don't actually use the terminologies anymore. And that's why I said about understanding the DNA. You need to understand what it is and the problems you're trying to fix within your organization, and how the approaches and the methodologies allow you to tackle those specific problems. Toyota doesn't go in and apply the Toyota production system within its suppliers. They go in and they provide the coaches to support the ability for them to meet the expectations that they have through systematically problem solving their issues day in and day out. 5S was not a tool that Toyota looked at and said, hey, we should do 5S. 5S was created out of a problem. They identified that they didn't have what they need when they needed it, and it was causing them the frustration of increased time and employee frustration. So they created an approach in how they organized and set up their physical space to put physical standards in so that they could see when they had a problem. And it allowed them to ask why. Why isn't what I need where I need it? What's causing that? Do we need to change the standard? Do we need to do it? Everything that's put in place is driven from the ability to solve a problem. And once you empower your people to understand how they can be a part of solving that problem, you unlock the key. And then all of a sudden, speaking the language of it isn't the important side of it. What you're actually trying to do is fix the problem.
Love it. Nikki, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks for taking my question. I also echo what the other questioners have said before about the impact of your presentation, James. One of the things that kind of twigged a question for me as you were talking, I guess it's a bit more of a nuts and bolts question, but when you were talking about the PDSA model there, one of the things you said, talked about was establishing a tracking system. And I just wondered if you could speak a little bit more about what that looked like, and what elements were you tracking, and then who were you communicating to as things were evolving, like those stakeholders? Just something about that piece of it.
Yeah, so I think that's, and I should probably just clarify something. So I had on there like PDSA, right? I don't know, did you all know what PDSA is? Like when they say PDSA?
Give you a quick explanation.
Yeah, sure. So this is actually a cool nuance for you. So when I came into healthcare, I heard people talking about PDSA, and I was like, PDSA. I'm like, are they like calling it? Are they like, isn't it PDCA? Like what is this? Like, is it from a manufacturing perspective? Like that's the predominant language that is used. It's what you see most associated with Lean. So Plan, Do, Check, Act is actually what came out from the findings within Toyota, because they had they felt that philosophy of checking means you actually physically go see and check that the change that you've made is working. And so the check principle is more so driven from the physical going and seeing, whereas Deming was the individual who brought that training to Japan. He was pretty adamant. He hated the use of PDCA, and in the academic world, it's very much referred to as Plan, Do, Study, Act. And study is more so from the research perspective, sort of mindset of study the impact of the change and look at the data, and it's so you will see that more so on the academic and healthcare side than you will in general. So sorry, I just wanted to clarify that piece. And the measures that I'm referring to align to what the area that you're working within is tracking for their performance, like their key performance indicators, their targets. What are they looking at? And so the problem solving that's happening has to have an alignment to what's important within the group, for the tasks that they're trying to achieve. So whether that's, you know, whether that's a specific turnaround time that you're looking for, whether that's a quality metric that you're measuring, whether it's health and safety, whatever that is, your problem solving should be able to be aligned back to that. Not that change for the sake of change doesn't create change, but it's unaligned change, so you don't move the needle. So the importance of that is that you can have a group that comes together and they're doing all this work and they're trying to get support for making change from their leadership group. But if they don't see the alignment to what you're trying to achieve, you might not get the same level of support as if you aligned it to the specific areas within the organizations. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. Thank you. Gives me some other ideas. Great.
Any other questions out there? If not, I might ask a quick one. We have a few minutes left here. Yeah. We talked a little bit in the intro about some of the stuff that you're doing with the nonprofit. James had told me a bit of a story about this, and maybe just give you an opportunity just to explain maybe you know, doing something like this and similar type of ideas when we're talking about lean and improvement and everything, and working with a team on the other side of the world and at a very, you know, infant style level is not what I mean, but very not as much technologically advanced as obviously we are in our country. You know, we're talking about, you know, second and third world countries that you're working with. You just want to tell a bit of a story about that? We've got about 7 minutes left here before we're done. So
yeah, so this work is, you know, I think it means a lot to, you know, obviously within our organization to be able to provide support to communities that don't have the luxuries that we have on a daily basis. And we are currently working on a facility just outside of Nairobi in Kenya, where we are building a manufacturing facility for the production of ceramic pots. These pots allow the water that they have to go through. They capture the impurities within the water and allow them to have drinking water that doesn't make them sick. Again, we're looking at it again from how we can support that ability for communities to have clean drinking water, because the impact on their health, you know, when they're sick, you know, the parents unable to go to work, unable to support their families, and if their children are sick, they're not able to go to school, and if they're not able to go to school, that means the parents, often in this case, the mother is not able to leave them, and the cost of medications is extremely high. To the impact to the social dynamics within these communities is huge. And so we're working right now on getting this facility built, and it has been really interesting. We're working with a group of potters that we are talking on the standards of how you build these these clay ceramic filters, and the actual construction has been just like interesting to see. I mean, we're doing this over Zoom, so we're like walking around the facility, and you're seeing like these extreme grades, and they're describing the soil types, and you know how when the water hits a specific type of soil, it just turns it into mud, and so they have to adjust it. And they're doing all this with really basic equipment, you know, nothing fancy at all. Some of the ladders, I'm pretty sure, would not pass health and safety inspections, and I always say, like, you guys make sure you're being careful out there. it's been really enlightening, and it's very, very interesting just to see how their construction methods are, in comparison to ours, but they do what they do to with the equipment that they have. Things that building a facility and making sure we have a guard station up at the front. Things that we just take for granted that we have to incorporate in. And one of the big areas that we really want to make sure is in place is that this isn't a facility where we're going to be bringing people in to do the work. We are going to be working with local communities, creating those opportunities, building their capabilities and capacities to run this facility. And at the same time, our end goal here is that we're actually going to have a portion of our facility that will actually foster and incubate innovation within the local community, and we'll have providers come in and we'll be able to work with them and teach them some of our approaches, Lean, for example, and how they can take their ideas from just a simple idea to something that can really make a difference within their community. And it can be very simple things, just things that we take for granted. They have to create innovation around, and they are fantastic at it. I think they're probably more innovative in many ways than we are, because we don't have that urgency. They have that urgency. It's not like they can go to a tap and just turn it on and have clean water. And I think that's a pretty eye-opening thing. But yeah, there's lots on there, Brian, around like the construction side and the planning on that over Zoom. I'm on calls, I get off work, come home, have dinner, and then I'm on a call at 9-10 o'clock with them over there, and they're just getting up in the morning. And yeah,
that's awesome. I think what you hit on kind of almost what I was even trying to pull out at the very beginning. It's about people, and we talk about that so much in everything that we do, and even when it comes to in our industry, and even some of the tools that we use, and in the end it comes back to the people, and that's to me what Lean is all about. It's about developing people. It's about building people. We've got all this other fancy terms and terminology and all that stuff, but really we're trying to build people and make things better. So yeah, from my end, this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing with us. I've been looking forward to this for a while, and I know obviously that you've been busy and tied up with everything else that's been going on. So we've been wanting to try and get you on here for a while, and I just want to thank you so much for taking some time on your day off to share with us, and I owe you a beer or two or three.
It's my pleasure. And and I would say anyone on the call, if you want to reach out, buy me a coffee. I'm more than happy to chat anytime if you want to run it by. So yeah, my pleasure.
Excellent. Thanks so much, and thanks everyone for tuning in. Like Avel said, check out our space on LinkedIn. We'll have our one for next month as well. We're gonna have another pretty good one, I think. So we've been hitting some home runs here, and James just hit it completely out of the park today for us. So it's going to be a tough couple acts to follow here. So thank you, everyone. We're going to call it a day for this month, and we'll see everyone in April.
Be healthy, everyone. Be safe.
Thanks, everyone.